She looked like every other passenger. Jeans. A hoodie. A coffee cup. A small backpack. Nobody looked at her twice. But somewhere above the clouds, 2 fighter pilots opened a routine list of names, and one name made them go completely silent. Nothing about this flight was ordinary anymore. Before you watch the full story, comment below from where you are watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. Maya Reyes had arrived at Chicago O'Hare International Airport at 5:45 in the morning. Her flight to San Diego did not board until 8:10. That gave her nearly 2.5 hours to sit, drink bad airport coffee, and try not to think too much. She was good at not thinking too much. She had spent 15 years learning how. The airport was already busy even at that early hour. Families with small children were spread out across rows of seats, bags and snack wrappers and coloring books scattered around them like a small storm had passed through. Business travelers sat alone with their laptops open, their faces pale and focused in the blue glow of their screens. Soldiers in uniform moved in small groups toward different gates, their boots quiet on the polished floor. Maya watched all of them. She always watched. It was not something she did on purpose anymore. It was simply the way her eyes worked after 15 years of flying combat missions in places where paying attention to everything around you was the difference between coming home and not coming home. She noticed the young soldier near gate 14, no older than 19, sitting by himself with his elbows on his knees and his head down. She noticed the elderly man near the coffee kiosk who was struggling to open his wallet with shaking hands. She noticed the mother across the aisle who was trying to feed a crying baby while also managing a stroller and a carry-on bag that kept sliding off her shoulder. She went to the coffee kiosk first. She paid for the elderly man's coffee without saying much, just a quiet nod when he looked up in surprise. He tried to thank her but she was already walking away. She sat down 2 seats away from the young soldier at gate 14. She did not say anything for a few minutes. She just sat, and drank her coffee, and looked out at the tarmac where ground crews were beginning their morning work. After a while, the soldier looked up. "First deployment?" Maya asked, without turning her head. He blinked. "How did you know?" "You've been staring at the same spot on the floor for 20 minutes, she said simply. "And you keep checking your phone but you're not reading anything." He let out a slow breath. "Fort Bragg. Then Kabul. We leave in 3 weeks." Maya nodded. She was quiet for a moment. "You scared?" "Yeah," he said. "Good," she said. "Stay that way. Fear is useful. It keeps you sharp. Just don't let it make the decisions for you." He looked at her carefully. "You sound like you've been there." "A few times," she said. She finished her coffee, stood up, picked up her backpack, and walked back toward gate 17. The soldier watched her go, and something in his face had changed. He sat up a little straighter. Maya did not notice. She had already moved on. Flight 2291 from Chicago O'Hare to San Diego was operated by American Airlines and carried a Boeing 737-800. Maya knew the aircraft well. Not from flying it, the 737 was a commercial workhorse, not a military aircraft, but because she had spent 15 years flying machines that were built to a far higher standard of performance, and she understood the engineering behind every aircraft she stepped onto. She boarded early, not because she was in first class, but because she had a boarding Group 1 ticket from her frequent flyer status. She had accumulated more flight miles than most people would in 3 lifetimes, though almost none of those miles had been on commercial airlines. Her seat was 14A. Window seat. Left side of the aircraft. She put her backpack in the overhead bin, sat down, and opened her book. It was a novel about a fisherman in Norway. She had been reading it slowly for 3 weeks. She liked books that had nothing to do with her work. The middle seat, 14B, was taken by a woman in her mid-40s named Carol Brennan. Carol had bright red hair, a large tote bag full of magazines and snacks, and the cheerful energy of someone who genuinely enjoyed talking to strangers on airplanes. She settled into her seat with a great deal of rustling and adjusting, pulled out a celebrity gossip magazine, looked at the cover, put it down, and looked at Maya. "Going to San Diego?" Carol asked. "Yes," Maya said, not looking up from her book. "Me too. I'm visiting my daughter. She just had a baby girl. First grandchild." Carol beamed as though the sun itself had asked her to deliver a personal message. "Do you have children?" "No," Maya said. "Oh, there's still time, don't worry. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?" "You look young. I always say people who look young eat well and sleep enough. Do you sleep well?" "I never sleep well on planes. I need at least 3 pillows and complete darkness, and even then. I sleep fine anywhere," Maya said. Carol laughed. "I envy you. What do you do for work?" "Let me guess, you're a doctor. You have that calm doctor energy. Like nothing surprises you." Maya turned a page of her book. "I work in aerospace." "Oh, fascinating. Like rockets and things?" "Navigation systems, mostly. Tactical flight systems." Maya paused. "It's not very exciting to explain." Carol accepted this and turned back to her magazine. But she kept glancing at Maya with a friendly curiosity, the way some people do when they sense there is more to a person than what is visible on the surface, and they cannot quite help themselves from looking. The aisle seat, 14C, was taken just before the doors closed by a man named Dr. Robert Hale. He was in his late 60s, tall, with silver hair and round glasses and the quiet, deliberate movements of someone who had spent decades thinking carefully before he acted. He was a retired professor of aerospace engineering at MIT, though nobody on the plane knew this. He carried a single briefcase and no other bags, and he sat down with a small polite smile and immediately put on reading glasses and opened a thick journal full of equations. Maya glanced at the journal once. She recognized the equations. They were related to inertial navigation systems, the same kind she had spent years working with in military aircraft. She said nothing. She went back to her book. The plane pushed back from the gate at 8:17, 7 minutes behind schedule. Maya looked out the window as the ground crews finished their work and the aircraft began its slow taxi toward the runway. She watched the runway lights, the taxiway markings, the wind sock at the far end of the field moving gently in a light northwest wind. Old habits. The engine spooled up as the aircraft lined up on runway 10L. Maya felt the familiar pressure as the throttle advanced and the aircraft began its takeoff roll. She felt every vibration in the airframe, every small correction the pilots made, the precise moment the nose lifted, the main gear leaving the ground, the clean rotation into the cold morning air. She let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. Some things never left you. At 38,000 feet above the American heartland, 2 F-15 Strike Eagles from the 159th Fighter Wing out of Naval Air Station Joint Reserve Base New Orleans were flying a scheduled air patrol mission along the central United States corridor. Captain Daniel Mercer, call sign Atlas, was flying lead. He had 6 years in the F-15 and nearly 800 flight hours in combat aircraft. He was precise, disciplined, and quietly proud of his record. His wingman was First Lieutenant Priya Sharma, call sign Vega. She had 2 years in the F-15, 400 flight hours, and an aggressively analytical mind that her instructors had described as both her greatest strength and her greatest challenge. She thought about everything too much and too fast, and she was almost always right, which made it difficult for anyone to tell her to slow down. They were running a standard patrol route, monitoring commercial airspace along a corridor that had been flagged for elevated security attention following intelligence reports about a potential threat to domestic aviation. The mission was largely administrative, watching, reporting, being present. Nothing was expected to happen. At 8:43 in the morning, Atlas received a routine data packet from NORAD control. It contained updated passenger manifests for 6 commercial flights currently operating within their patrol zone. This was standard procedure. The names were run automatically through multiple security databases. Usually, the whole process took less than 2 minutes and produced nothing of interest. This time, one name produced a result that neither pilot was prepared for. Atlas stared at his screen. "Vega," he said over their secure channel. His voice was careful and controlled, but Vega had flown enough hours with him to know when something had changed in his tone. "Go ahead," she said. "I need you to look at this manifest return. Flight 2291, Seat 14A. A pause. Tell me what you see." Vega pulled up the data on her own screen. She read the name. She read the security flag next to it. She read the service record summary that had auto-populated from the military database. She was quiet for a long moment. "Atlas," she said finally. "Yeah. Is this real?" "NORAD confirms positive identification. Biometric match from TSA check-in. It's real." Another silence. "Ghost," Vega said. The word came out differently from how she would have said any other call sign. It was quieter. More careful. Like saying it too loud might break something. "Ghost," Atlas confirmed. "Lieutenant Colonel Maya Reyes. Call sign Ghost. Retired from active duty 8 months ago after 17 years of distinguished service. She had flown F-16 Fighting Falcons and F-22 Raptors. She had logged over 300 combat missions across Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, and 2 classified theaters of operation that were not publicly acknowledged. She had been the first woman in Air Force history to receive both the Air Force Cross and the Distinguished Flying Cross with Valor device in the same calendar year. Her name appeared in the training manuals at every advanced fighter weapons school in the country. Her missions were studied. Her decisions were analyzed. Her call sign was spoken with a particular kind of reverence that was rarely given to anyone who was still alive. "Command, this is Atlas Flight," Mercer said, keying his radio to the NORAD frequency. "We have confirmed identification of a priority military VIP aboard civilian Flight 2291. Requesting clarification of protocol." The response came back within 90 seconds, which told him that someone senior had been waiting for exactly this call. "Atlas Flight, this is General Collins, NORAD Command Authority. I'll speak plainly. Colonel Reyes is traveling as a private civilian and has no knowledge of our identification. She is not connected to any security threat. However, given her service record and her contributions to this country, Pentagon Authority has pre-authorized an optional recognition protocol if circumstances allow and if your flight crew is prepared to execute it. This is entirely your call, Atlas." Mercer looked out his canopy at the empty blue sky ahead of him. "General," he said, "it would be the honor of my career." "Mine too," Vega said quietly, on their shared channel. Back on Flight 2291, the cabin had settled into the comfortable quiet of a mid-morning flight. The flight attendants had completed the beverage service. Some passengers were sleeping. Others were watching movies on their phones or reading. The hum of the engines filled the space in a way that was almost peaceful. Carol had worked her way through half her magazine and was now eating a small bag of pretzels and reading an article about a celebrity's kitchen renovation. Dr. Hale was still working through his journal, occasionally making small notes in the margin with a mechanical pencil. Maya had set down her book and was looking out the window. The sky at 38,000 feet was a deep, clear blue that she had always found difficult to describe to people who had never seen it from a cockpit. It was not the soft blue of a summer afternoon or the pale blue of morning. It was something harder and more absolute. A blue that had no bottom to it. A blue that went on forever in every direction, and if you knew how to read it, it told you everything: wind speed, visibility, moisture content, temperature, turbulence potential. She had spent 17 years reading that sky. She missed it every single day. Carol looked up from her magazine and caught Maya looking out the window with an expression that Carol could not quite name. It was not sadness exactly. It was something more complicated than that. "You love flying, don't you?" Carol said. Maya turned from the window. "What makes you say that?" "The way you look at it. Like it's yours." Carol smiled. "My late husband used to look at the ocean that way. He was a sailor. 20 years in the Navy. He used to say the sea recognized him." She paused. "Does the sky recognize you?" Maya was quiet for a moment. Something moved through her face, brief, almost invisible, and then it was gone. "I used to think so," she said. She picked up her book again. But she did not read it. She held it open on her lap and looked out the window, and Carol, who was a perceptive woman despite her cheerful chattiness, decided not to say anything more for a while. Dr. Hale had stopped writing in his journal. He was looking at Maya over his glasses with a quiet attention that was different from Carol's curiosity, more measured, more informed. He had caught certain words in the brief exchange. Aerospace. Navigation systems. Tactical flight systems. The way she had described the pilots during the takeoff roll, before she realized she was narrating out loud, the precise terminology she had used without thinking. He suspected something. He was a careful man. He said nothing yet. At 9:15 in the morning, Captain James Morrison, the pilot of Flight 2291, received a transmission from air traffic control that made him sit forward in his seat. "American 2291, this is Chicago Center. We have a military coordination request involving your flight. Please switch to secondary frequency for a direct communication with NORAD Command. Do you copy?" Morrison exchanged a look with his first officer, Dana Park. "Copy, Chicago Center. Switching now." What he heard on the secondary frequency over the next 4 minutes left him speechless for a full 10 seconds after the call ended. Park was watching him carefully. "Captain." Morrison set down his headset slowly. He had been flying commercial aircraft for 22 years. He had diverted for medical emergencies. He had made emergency landings in bad weather. He had once handled a partial hydraulic failure over the Atlantic with the calm efficiency of someone who had practiced for exactly that situation. But in 22 years, nothing had ever prepared him for this. "Dana," he said, "do you know who Maya Reyes is?" Park frowned. "The name sounds familiar." "Ghost," Morrison said. Park's eyes went wide. "She's on this plane. Seat 14A. She booked as a private civilian. She has no idea any of this is happening." Morrison looked out the cockpit window at the vast blue sky ahead. "And we have 2 F-15s from the 159th Wing who have requested permission to execute a recognition protocol." Park was quiet for a long moment. "What are you going to do?" Morrison reached for the cabin intercom. Maya heard the captain's voice come over the speakers and thought nothing of it at first. Routine announcements were a background feature of commercial flying, the same way the engine hum was a background feature, present, expected, irrelevant. Then she heard what he was saying. "Ladies and gentlemen, I need to ask for your attention for a moment. This is your captain speaking. I have an unusual announcement to make, and I want to be thoughtful about how I make it." The cabin quieted. People pulled out their earbuds. A few passengers looked up from their screens. "We have a passenger on board this morning whose name I have just been made aware of through a communication with the United States military. I want to be careful not to embarrass anyone, but I also want the passengers on this flight to understand what is about to happen outside our windows." Maya went very still. In a few minutes, 2 United States Air Force F-15 Strike Eagles will come alongside our aircraft to perform a recognition salute. This salute has been authorized at the Pentagon level. It is being performed in honor of Lieutenant Colonel Maya Reyes, United States Air Force, retired, who is seated in row 14, seat A. Every head in the cabin turned. Maya closed her eyes. She heard Carol gasp softly beside her. She heard Dr. Hale set down his pencil. She heard the sound of dozens of people shifting in their seats to look at her, and she felt the weight of all those eyes the way you feel a change in air pressure, sudden, undeniable, physical. She opened her eyes and looked straight ahead. Colonel Reyes's call sign is Ghost, the captain continued, and his voice had changed slightly, still professional, but with something underneath it that was quieter and more genuine. She flew over 300 combat missions. She was the first woman in Air Force history to receive both the Air Force Cross and the Distinguished Flying Cross with Valor in the same year. She saved lives that are still being lived today because of her. She retired 8 months ago after 17 years of service, and she is flying with us this morning as a private citizen, the same as any of you. A pause. On behalf of the crew of American Airlines Flight 2291, and on behalf of every person on this aircraft, thank you, Colonel. The cabin was completely silent for 1 second. Then it erupted. The applause started in the back and moved forward like a wave. People stood up. An elderly veteran 2 rows behind Maya was clapping with his whole body, not just his hands. A woman near the front was crying. 3 children in the middle section had no idea what was happening, but they were clapping because everyone else was clapping, which seemed like the right thing to do. Carol had both hands over her mouth. Tears were running down her face and she was not making any effort to stop them. "Oh my goodness," she was saying, over and over, very quietly. "Oh my goodness." Dr. Hale had removed his glasses. He was looking at Maya with an expression of calm and complete recognition, the expression of a man who had suspected something and had just been told he was right. Maya did not stand up. She did not wave. She sat with her hands in her lap and her book closed on the seat beside her, and she looked at the people around her who were clapping for her, and something moved through her face that was hard to read, gratitude and discomfort in equal measure, and underneath both of them, something deeper that she kept very carefully controlled. "You're Ghost," Carol said, in a voice barely above a whisper. "I was Ghost," Maya said quietly. "Now I'm just Maya." Carol reached over and took her hand. She held it firmly, the way an older sister might, or a mother. She did not say anything else. She just held her hand, and Maya let her. The applause took several minutes to settle. A flight attendant named Rosa came to Maya's row and crouched down in the aisle, her expression warm and slightly odd. "Colonel Reyes, is there anything we can get you? Anything at all?" "I'm fine, thank you," Maya said. "Please, I'd rather everyone just went back to their flight." Rosa nodded, but her eyes were bright. "Can I ask, is it true what the captain said? About the Air Force Cross and the Distinguished Flying Cross in the same year?" "Yes," Maya said simply. Rosa pressed her lips together and nodded once, as though confirming something to herself, and went back to her duties. Passengers began coming to Maya's row. Not in a rush, there was an instinctive orderliness to it, as though everyone understood that this required a certain kind of respect. A tall man in a Marine Corps veteran hat reached over and extended his hand. Staff Sergeant Carlos Webb, USMC, retired. 2 tours in Fallujah. He shook her hand firmly. "Colonel, it is an honor." "The honor is mine, Sergeant," Maya said. A young woman in scrubs, a nurse, flying to San Diego for a conference, stopped and said simply, "My brother is in the Air Force. He talks about Ghost." "I never thought I'd," she stopped herself. "Thank you." A teenage boy, maybe 15, stood at the end of the row and looked at Maya with enormous eyes. "Did you really fly F-22 Raptors?" "I did," Maya said. "What's it like?" Maya looked at him for a moment. "Have you ever had a moment where everything else disappears and it's just you and the problem in front of you, and the whole world gets very quiet and very clear?" The boy thought about it. "When I'm playing chess, sometimes. It's like that," Maya said. "But the chess board is three-dimensional and moving at Mach 1.5. The boy's eyes went even wider. He went back to his seat walking slightly differently than he had walked to Maya's row. Dr. Hale finally spoke. He had been waiting, patient as always. "Colonel Reyes," he said quietly. "I'm Robert Hale. I spent 30 years teaching aerospace engineering at MIT. I have been studying your published work on adaptive inertial navigation under combat degradation conditions. It is some of the finest applied research in the field." Maya turned to look at him with genuine surprise. Of everything anyone had said to her in the last 10 minutes, this was the one that broke through her careful composure in a new way. "You read that paper," she said. "I assigned it," he said. 3 years in a row. My graduate students complained about the math. I told them the math was the easy part." He paused. "What you did in that research, combining 15 years of combat experience with the theoretical framework, it will change how we design navigation redundancy systems for the next generation of military aircraft." Maya was quiet for a moment. "It was supposed to be a retirement project," she said. "Something to keep me busy." "It became something considerably more important than that," Dr. Hale said. He put his glasses back on. "I am glad to meet you, Colonel." "Maya," she said. "Robert," he replied. And they shook hands across Carol, who was still holding a crumpled tissue and smiling at both of them as though she had personally arranged the introduction. The announcement came from Rosa at the front of the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to direct your attention to the left side windows, the F-15s are now moving into position." The entire cabin shifted left. Children pressed their faces to the oval windows. Adults craned over each other. Camera phones appeared in every direction. The cabin filled with a low murmur of astonishment. Maya looked out her window. They were beautiful. 2 F-15 Strike Eagles, close enough that she could see the details of the airframe, the twin tails, the angular intakes, the underwing pylons, the long sleek nose that she had always thought looked like it was permanently pointed somewhere important. They were flying in tight, precise formation alongside the 737, matching its speed exactly, holding their position with the effortless discipline of pilots at the absolute top of their profession. She had flown aircraft like these for 17 years. She knew every system, every limitation, every tendency in different weather conditions. She knew what it felt like to sit in that cockpit at altitude, the oxygen mask on, the helmet's heads-up display painting the world in green light, the stick and throttle responding to the faintest input. She knew the smell of the cockpit and the sound of the radio and the particular quality of the light through the canopy at 38,000 feet. She had thought she would never miss it this much. Her throat tightened. She heard Atlas's voice come through the aircraft speakers. The captain had patched the communication through to the cabin. "Colonel Reyes, this is Captain Daniel Mercer, call sign Atlas, 159th Fighter Wing. My wingman is First Lieutenant Priya Sharma, call sign Vega. We have the honor of flying escort for your flight this morning." A pause. When Atlas spoke again, his voice was measured but something in it was not entirely controlled. "Colonel, I want to tell you something. Not as a military formality, but because it's true and because you deserve to hear it plainly. I became a fighter pilot because of Ghost. Your missions, the decisions you made, the way you operated under pressure, the things you chose to do when you didn't have to and everyone would have understood if you hadn't, they defined what this job is supposed to mean. Every pilot I know who is worth anything has sat in a briefing room and studied your decisions and tried to understand how you made them. You are not just a legend in this community. You are the standard." The cabin was absolutely silent. Maya put her hand flat against the window. Vega's voice came through next, quieter, younger, and somehow more raw. "Colonel Reyes. I'm 6 months out of the fighter weapons school. I have your graduation citation on the wall of my quarters. I have had it there since I was 22 years old and decided this was what I wanted to do with my life. I just want to say, being here right now, flying alongside your aircraft, I know I'll remember this every day for the rest of my career. Thank you for showing us what this is supposed to look like." 3 seconds of silence. Then the two F-15s executed their salute. The maneuver was clean and powerful, a simultaneous roll, both aircraft banking away in opposite directions in a long, sweeping arc that traced two bright lines against the blue sky, and then curving back into formation as smoothly and precisely as if the sky itself had choreographed it. Passengers gasped. Someone cried out. Children cheered. The Marine veteran behind Maya said something very quietly that might have been a prayer. Maya watched every second of it. Her jaw was tight. Her eyes were bright. She did not wipe them. She sat straight and watched the two F-15s come back into formation, and she put her hand on the glass, and she let herself feel it, all of it, the pride and the loss and the love she had for that sky and the people who flew in it, all at once, without holding any of it back. Just for a moment. Just this once. Then she took a breath. She straightened in her seat. She took her hand off the window. She was still Colonel Maya Reyes, call sign Ghost, and she was still the same person who had learned that feelings were something you felt completely and then put down so you could keep moving. She pressed the button for the communication channel. Atlas. Vega. Her voice was quiet and completely steady. You honor me. Fly safe. Watch each other's six. Copy that, Ghost, Atlas said. Always. The F-15s peeled away and disappeared into the blue. The cabin stayed silent for a long moment. Then Carol Brennan, grandmother, pretzel eater, lover of celebrity gossip magazines, the woman who talked to everyone and had no particular reason to be on this flight other than that her daughter had just had a baby, put her arm around Maya Reyes and pulled her into a hug. Maya, who had not been hugged by anyone in 8 months, who had spent 17 years being professionally excellent and operationally precise and personally careful, who had learned to carry everything alone because that was what you did when you flew alone, Maya Reyes sat in seat 14B of American Airlines Flight 2291 and let a stranger hold her, and she closed her eyes, and she did not say anything at all. For the remainder of the flight, the cabin had changed in the way that cabins sometimes change after something unexpected and real has happened in a shared space. It was quieter, but not in a tense way. It was the quiet of people who had been reminded of something important and were sitting with it. A young man from the back of the plane, no older than 20, came forward and stood nervously at the end of Maya's row. He was wearing a university sweatshirt and had the look of someone who had rehearsed what he was going to say several times and was not sure it was enough. Colonel Reyes, he said. My name is James. I have my ROTC interview at the Naval Academy next month. I've been having second thoughts. I don't know if I'm the right kind of person for this. The truth is I'm not sure what the right kind of person looks like. Maya looked at him for a long moment. What made you want to do it in the first place, she asked. He thought about it. I want to do something that matters. I want to look back when I'm old and know I did something that was hard and real. Then you're the right kind of person, Maya said simply. The ones who do it for the status or the uniform usually figure out pretty quickly that it costs more than they were expecting. The ones who do it because they want to do something real, they figure that out too, but it doesn't stop them. She paused. Go to the interview. Be honest about being afraid. The best officers I ever served with never pretended to be something they weren't. They were just willing to do the hard thing anyway. He nodded. He stood there for another second as if he wanted to say more, and then just said thank you and went back to his seat. An older woman across the aisle leaned over. My son is a Marine, she said. He's been deployed twice. I worry every single day. She looked at Maya with the direct, searching eyes of a mother who had spent years looking for reassurance in the faces of people who understood what her son was doing. Does it get easier? The worry? Maya considered this carefully. She did not give easy answers. No, she said honestly. But the people doing it, they're prepared. They're trained by people who take it seriously. They know how to look out for each other. A pause. Your worry means you understand what it costs. That's not a bad thing. Hold on to it. The woman nodded slowly. Something in her face relaxed, just slightly. Dr. Hale, who had been listening to all of this with quiet attention, spoke when the older woman had turned back to her window. "You're very good at that," he said to Maya. "At what?" "Giving people exactly what they need without giving them false comfort." He turned a page of his journal. "That's rarer than most people understand." Maya looked at him. "You sound like you've given a lot of student feedback." 30 years worth, he said. "One learns the difference between what people want to hear and what actually helps them." He paused. "You have the same instinct. You always have, I suspect." Maya looked back out the window at the sky. "I had good teachers," she said. Flight 2291 began its descent into San Diego at 10:47 in the morning, right on schedule. Maya watched the city come into view below, the blue water of the harbor, the grid of streets, the pale hills in the distance. She knew this city well. She had been stationed at Miramar twice during her career. She had flown training missions over those hills and low approaches over that water, and the sight of it from above still felt like something that belonged to her in a way that was difficult to explain to someone who had not spent their life in the sky. The landing was smooth. A good crew. She noted the crosswind correction on final approach, the flare, the firm but controlled touchdown. Standard commercial precision. Good work. When the aircraft stopped at the gate and the seatbelt sign went off, nobody moved immediately. That was unusual. Normally people were on their feet before the aircraft had fully stopped, reaching for their bags, crowding the aisle. But today, people sat. After a moment, it became clear why. People were waiting for Maya to go first. She was the last person to realize it. She looked up from stowing her book to find the aisle clear and 24 faces turned toward her, waiting quietly, giving her the space to stand and go first. She stood up. She pulled her backpack from the overhead bin. She turned to Carol, who was already on her feet, mascara still slightly blurred from earlier, eyes bright. "Come see the granddaughter sometime," Carol said. "I mean that." Maya smiled, a real one, not the careful professional version. "Congratulations on the baby." Carol hugged her again, quickly this time, and then stepped back to let her through. She shook Dr. Hale's hand. "The paper on degraded navigation redundancy," he said. "There's a follow-up waiting to be written. The next generation applications. I have a dozen graduate students who would work themselves to exhaustion to collaborate with you." "I know where MIT is," Maya said. Something that might have been a smile crossed his face. "Good." She walked down the aisle. The Marine veteran nodded at her from his seat, a small, sharp nod, the kind that carries everything. She nodded back. The young man in the university sweatshirt raised a hand. She raised hers. The mother with the baby, now awake and curious, waved the baby's tiny hand at Maya, which made Maya stop for just a second and look at the small, serious face of a human being who had not yet been anywhere or done anything and had the whole world still completely ahead of her. "Hi," Maya said to the baby. The baby blinked. Maya walked off the plane. Rosa, the flight attendant, caught her at the jet bridge door. She was holding something, the small set of captain's wings that American Airlines sometimes gave to children as a memento. She held them out to Maya. "Captain Morrison asked me to give you these," Rosa said. "He said, and I'm quoting him exactly, he said to tell you that he has flown 22 years and he has never been more proud to have someone in his cabin." Maya took the wings. She looked at them in her palm, small, gold-colored, lightweight, the kind of thing that was given to children to make them feel special. She closed her fingers around them. "Tell him thank you," she said. "Tell him his crew is excellent." She walked up the jet bridge and into the terminal. Chicago O'Hare to San Diego. 2 hours and 40 minutes. One connection, made in no particular haste. A woman in jeans and a gray hoodie with a backpack and a paperback book and a cup of airport coffee, who looked like every other passenger. Until the sky recognized her call sign. 2 weeks after Flight 2291, a short video filmed by a passenger went live on social media. It showed the two F-15s executing their salute from the window of a commercial aircraft, and a single quiet sentence from the person filming, "Apparently a war hero is sitting 3 rows ahead of me and nobody knew until the Air Force showed up." The video was viewed 11 million times. Maya did not watch it. She had gone back to her work, consulting for 3 aerospace companies, finishing the follow-up navigation paper that Dr. Hale had suggested, and teaching a one-day seminar for advanced Air Force cadets that she had been quietly running for the last 4 months out of a conference room in San Diego. She taught the same thing every time. Not tactics. Not technique. She taught them how to think clearly when everything around them was trying to make them panic. She taught them how to make the right decision when there was no good option, only better and worse ones. She taught them how to carry a difficult thing without being crushed by it. The young man from the back of the plane, James, received his acceptance to the ROTC program 3 months later. In the personal statement he submitted with his application, he wrote one paragraph about the flight from Chicago to San Diego and the woman in seat 14A who had told him that the right kind of person was not the fearless one, but the one who was afraid and showed up anyway. He read that paragraph at his ROTC induction ceremony. His mother was in the front row. She cried through the whole thing. Atlas and Vega flew together for another 2 years before Atlas was promoted to major and given his own squadron. On the day he took command, he stood in front of his pilots and he told them about Flight 2291, and about Ghost, and about what it had meant to fly alongside an aircraft carrying someone who had made every hard choice correctly when it cost the most. He told them that the standard existed. He told them that he had seen it with his own eyes. He told them that their job was to be worthy of it. Vega had Ghost citation on her wall for 11 more years. She took it with her to every base she was assigned to. When she eventually became an instructor at the Fighter Weapons School, she put it on the wall of her classroom. Students asked about it on the first day. She always told them the same thing. "That's the standard," she said. "Learn it." Carol Brennan sent Maya a photo of her granddaughter 3 weeks after the flight. The baby's name was Eva. She was 7 pounds, 4 ounces, with dark eyes and a serious expression that Carol said reminded her of someone she had met on an airplane. Maya printed the photo and put it on her desk. Dr. Robert Hale published the follow-up navigation paper 18 months later. Maya Reyes was listed as co-author. At the academic conference where he presented it, a room full of aerospace engineers and military flight systems researchers gave a standing ovation at the end, which was essentially unheard of in that particular academic community, where the standard form of approval was a polite nod. Dr. Hale accepted the applause with his usual measured grace. Afterward, a young engineer asked him what it had been like to collaborate with Colonel Reyes. He thought about it for a moment. "She is precise," he said. "She is honest. She listens more than she speaks. And when she says something, it is worth writing down." A pause. "She is also the only person I have ever met who somehow managed to work out a problem in 3-dimensional inertial drift compensation while sitting on a commercial flight between Chicago and San Diego. She mentioned it in an email the next morning as though it were a minor thing." The young engineer stared at him. "Yes," Dr. Hale said. "I know." Maya Reyes flew commercial again 2 months after Flight 2291. Chicago to Dallas. Different airline. Different seat. Window, left side, same as always. She wore jeans. White sneakers. A dark navy hoodie this time. Small backpack. Paperback book. She got through security without anyone looking twice. She found her gate. She got a cup of coffee that was exactly as mediocre as she expected. She sat down near the window and watched the ground crews work and thought about nothing in particular. A small girl, maybe 4 years old, wandered over from where her mother was sitting 2 rows away. She stood in front of Maya and stared at her with the direct, unfiltered curiosity of a child who has not yet learned that it is impolite to stare. Hi, the girl said. Hi, Maya said. What are you reading? Maya showed her the cover. The Norwegian Fisherman. That's a boring cover, the girl said. It's a better book than the cover suggests, Maya said. The girl considered this. Are you going on the airplane? Yes. Are you scared? No, Maya said. Why not? Maya looked at her. Small face. Serious eyes. Not afraid of anything yet. Because I know what airplanes are made of, Maya said. And I know how the sky works. And I trust the people flying the plane. The girl thought about this. I'm a little scared, she said. That's okay, Maya said. You can be a little scared and still get on the plane. That's what brave is. The girl looked at her for another moment. Then she turned around and walked back to her mother. Maya looked out the window at the plane waiting at the gate. She picked up her book. She opened it to the page she had left off. She drank her coffee. And when the gate agent called her boarding group, she stood up, put her backpack over her shoulder, and walked toward the plane the same way she had walked toward every aircraft she had ever flown, without hesitation, without ceremony, and without once looking back. Real heroes are not always visible. Sometimes they are sitting quietly beside you, reading a book, helping a nervous grandmother, telling a frightened kid that courage is not the absence of fear. Sometimes the sky knows their name before you do. And sometimes, just sometimes, it shows you.